on, y'all. Let freedom reign.
Cause we hustle, we strive, all we want is to survive. Cause we hustle, we strive, all we wanna do is thrive. Cause we hustle, we strive, all we want is to survive. Cause we hustle, we strive, all we want is to thrive.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
Cause we hustle, we strive, all we wanna do is thrive.
It is our duty to win.
Cause we hustle, we strive, all we want is to thrive.
We live in a world that don't give us opportunities, killing our kids and destroying our communities. All day we work ourselves to the bone, trying to take care of our families at home. A living wage is how we pay our bills. Stop us from going to jail and being killed. False promises, deception, and government control. Get out the way, stop stealing our soul.
We shall speak up, we shall rise up, we shall stand up, power up, fighting for our people. Speak up, we shall rise up, we shall stand up, power up, fighting for our people.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom, justice, no peace. It is our duty to win, no justice, no peace. It is our duty to fight for our freedom, justice, no peace. It is our duty to win, no justice, no peace.
United we stand, divided we fall. So many came before us to answer that call.
Great civilizations flourished in our past. The ancestors expected all to last. Knowledge, truth, and wisdom they gave. We can't allow this to stand in the grave. So people, get over your worry and doubt. We have work to do, so let's turn the system
We
out.
won't give up, we won't back down, we won't give in, lose ground, fighting for our freedom. Give up, we won't back down, we won't give in, lose ground, fighting for our freedom. Give up,
Fight for our
we won't back down, we won't give in, lose ground, fighting for our freedom. Give up,
fight for our
we won't back down, we won't give in, lose ground, fighting for our freedom.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
Was up, but now I've found.
It is our duty to win.
I'm found. I once was up, but now I've found.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom. Nothing to lose. It is our duty to win. We got nothing to lose with these chains.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in on this important conversation. My name is Annette Hollowell, and I have the privilege of being able to help moderate this conversation that we're holding tonight. I want to give a shout out to our partners, the National Employment Law Project. All right. We're going to make room for the technology to do what it needs to do. But wanted to just give a shout out and acknowledge our partners tonight, the National Employment Law Project, Stand With Dignity, the New Orleans Workers Center for Racial Justice, and the City Waste Union for making some space for us to talk about an issue that is not new for our communities, an issue that's not new for working class communities, but one of how we address some of the challenges and the obstacles that people have to full and fair employment, when it comes to fair wages, when it comes to how we treat them at all times, and also particularly in times like this, and how we start to talk about and address the cycles of poverty that folks are locked into through the fines and fees that are connected to a lot of how our criminal justice system operates. So I want to take a moment to do a few things, just give you a sense of the flow for the evening. We're going to take a little time with each of our participants, give them about 10 minutes each to really talk about and share their experiences related to this fight and why they are committed to working to shift the dial on some of these things, to work for better conditions for the hoppers, for sanitation workers, but for all working class people in New Orleans and across the country. And then we're gonna build in some time for question and answer towards the end of this so that you all can ask questions directly of anybody who's spoken today. A few reminders for you is that we are broadcasting live. So folks are able to pick this up on Facebook Live and a few other platforms. We are also simultaneously translating. So we want to make sure that folks take their time, speak slowly, speak clearly, so that the translators can convert this into Spanish so that we can keep everybody on the same page as we're moving forward through the conversation. And then as you have questions, please just look at the bottom of your screen. You'll see the bar with the chat. With the Q&A, and that's where you can put questions in there. We have a few folks online, volunteers and interns who are going to be fielding those questions, answering what they can, and then we'll also be asking the questions directly of the panelists. So if there are some things that you hear tonight and you want to circle back to folks, the Q&A portion will be an opportunity to follow up with everybody. So with that, I'm going to just take a moment to introduce each of the panelists. And as I said before, everybody will have about 10 minutes to speak and to share about their experiences and kind of what their call to action is around some of the issues that we're discussing tonight. The first person I want to lift up is Toya X. Toya is an organizer with Stand with Dignity, which is a project of the New Orleans Workers Center for Racial Justice based in New Orleans. She's a grassroots membership organizer. She organizes the base of underemployed and unemployed Black workers and leaders that are ready to build a powerful movement that results in dignity, equity, and inclusion in the New Orleans economy. Toya is the mastermind behind this conversation tonight and pulling together all the individuals that you're going to hear from. I'm just really grateful for her leadership around Stand with Dignity and fighting against this fines and fees and the warrants that are issued at the municipal and traffic court level. Toya is an advocate for transformation, harm reduction, and equity for all of humanity. Toya's partner in a lot of this work is Mr. Alfred Marshall, Mr. Al. Mr. Al is also an organizer with Stand with Dignity. He's born and raised in New Orleans. And he comes from the schooling of the Black Panthers. His entry into this work and his mindset in doing this community work is that when we're strong as a community, when we love and support each other, we're able to create and control what happens in our community. So grateful for Mr. Al and his leadership and looking forward to hearing from you some more tonight, sir. Tonight, we're also joined by Tawana Ewing. Ms. Ewing is a native New Orleanian. She works as a medical administrator, and she's on the young end, right? So she just turned 30, but has already been really active as a leader within Stand with Dignity. She first appeared on the scene back in 2017 when Stand helped support her in clearing out over $7,000 in traffic tickets that had been this dark cloud that had been looming over her head for 8 years. So we're grateful for her leadership, for her continuing to stand up, to show up, to share her story, to ask the hard questions and those real questions that lead to freedom and liberation for this community that she loves. Also on the line tonight, we have Datrion Wilkin. Datrion is also a native New Orleanian and survived Hurricane Katrina at the age of 10 years old. Datrion currently works as an auto claims adjuster, but she has very strong organizing skills. And so when her uncle Jonathan reached out to her, he's a sanitation worker, he's one of the hoppers that we're going to be hearing from tonight. When the sanitation workers went on strike, they reached out to Datrion, and she's been supporting their efforts since then, helping them to organize the City Waste Union. And if you looked at the New York Times recently, you'll see there was an opinion piece from Datrion there. So I'll share that in the chat so folks can check out that link. But thank you, Datrion, for your commitment and for being with us again tonight. We also have Mr. Harold Peters. He is a longtime professional sanitation worker who, after almost 2 decades of working under these conditions, has decided to stand up and fight for better conditions for all folks, all sanitation workers and people in similar situations. in this fight with 14 other sanitation workers, who we refer to as the hoppers. They formed the City Waste Union. So Harold is a modest man, but he's been right out front and leading his brothers to new heights in the fight for full and fair employment in New Orleans. And last, certainly not least, we have Mandisa Moore O'Neill. Mandisa is a Black feminist and founder of the Moore O'Neill Law Group, which is a Black feminist law and policy practice. Mandisa is a civil rights attorney that focuses on HIV decriminalization, litigation, education and advocacy, family law litigation, employment and public accommodations, discrimination, litigation. Mandisa is just the real deal, and one of the warriors, especially in the legal community in New Orleans, that we look to and call upon in times like these and times not like these. Mandisa's primary organizing support work is as a member of the Black Youth Project 100 BYP 100, the New Orleans chapter, Southerners on New Ground, New Orleans, and she's also a member of the Louisiana Coalition on Criminalization and Health. So we have just a great group of folks for you all to hear from and learn from tonight. And to kick us off in this conversation, I want to turn this over to Toya so that she can really help frame things for us as we really dig into this inquiry of why do Black workers matter, and what does Black workers matter means to all of us as we think about the different campaigns that we're lifting up tonight. So with that, Toya, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good night, everybody. Thank y'all for joining us, and thank y'all for watching our cute but corny video earlier. It was really fun to make, and I'm happy that we've been able to use it in this time. Like Annette said, I've been an organizer for over 7 years with Stand With Dignity at the New Orleans Workers Center, and I once organized with the Black Youth Project 100. I'm one of the founding members of that chapter in the city of New Orleans. So I'm a Black feminist too. I need to say it more, as Mandisa might tell me. So probably since 2011, I joined Stand With Dignity, and we started to organize around full and fair employment. And I learned a lot about the importance of organizing as a Black person, the importance of people being directly impacted in organizing, and the importance of paying attention to all the intersections that exist while organizing. But one of the barriers we found while organizing around full and fair employment is the barrier of criminalization that deeply, deeply impacts people of color in the Black community specifically. I think that it's been shown and proven that the way we get criminalized makes way and creates an exploitable workforce. And an exploitable workforce is a workforce that capitalism appreciates. They appreciate it when they're exploiting the immigrant community. They appreciate it when they can exploit people through prison labor, and they appreciate it when they can exploit us from being out here free on the streets and we have records. And in 2016, Stand With Dignity, we wanted to fight that. We wanted to make necessary changes to kind of put a dent in that, the ways in which we get exploited as workers. So in 2016, we found that after winning many policies with the city of New Orleans, with Housing Authority of New Orleans and many other places, we found that all those policies that we thought would give people access to full and fair employment, we found that criminalization still was an issue, and a specific area of criminalization that was an issue for folks was the area of fines and fees, but in the municipal and traffic court, which is one of the lower courts, but it still was an issue for people. We heard complaints from people who were afraid to go and get criminal background checks because they were afraid that they'd get arrested. So they couldn't get jobs that was asking them to do that. We heard from people who couldn't get jobs because they didn't have the driver's license, because they had thousands of dollars of warrants and fines and fees hanging over their heads, preventing them from going to the DMV to even begin to get their driver's license. And we felt we wanted to do something about that. So we learned about this thing called warrant clinics, or some people like to call them amnesty days. And we went to visit a warrant clinic that was put on by a judge back in December of 2016. And we saw it and we was like, we can do this, and we can do this much better than this because we have a much better community approach to the way we would do it. So in March of 2017 and September 2017, we hosted 2 Warren clinics. The first in March was beautiful. We ended up saving the community over $2.2 million. Over 800 people got their driver's license reinstated. And we got in contact with over 2,000 people in that time. So come September, we was ready to put on another Warren clinic, but structurally, they felt we had got too much in March. Too many people, it was too much money saved, too many driver's license reinstated, and we was unable to meet those same outcomes in September of 2017. And what we knew was this service of the Warren Clinic was just merely a service. It was just a simple tactic to expose a structure that was deeply harming people. And so what we decided was it was time to kick in the campaign. It was time to make necessary changes, and we didn't want to just change policy or reform policy. So we begin to educate ourselves around what abolition is and how does abolition fit in this conversation around fines and fees, around the criminal justice system. And so what we learned and came up with is that we could use the road of reform. However, if we were to do any reform, it needed to be non-reformist reforms. That way we'll be on the road towards abolition. And that's been the work for Stand With Dignity since 2017. In 2019, we passed a resolution, and it was signed by the full city council and co-signed and co-authored by the city council. They got really excited about it, y'all. And the resolution just stated that the New Orleans Municipal and Traffic Court, they needed to clean up their system. At the time, they had over 50,000 outstanding warrants and fines and fees. Outstanding warrants for people's arrests. And that meant there was an article that came out that spoke to 1 out of every 7 adults in the city of New Orleans had a warrant. And on that day, it was highlighted that we needed to fix that issue. And to this day, we're still working to figure out what does it look like to clean up the system? Do we file mass motions? Do people continue to walk back and look at the judge and be like, I'm one of those people, fix me, fix my system? How do we fix that resolution? We know that the resolution is beautiful, is a monumental statement, but we know we have more work to do. We have ordinances to write. We have laws to take off the book that's simply in place to criminalize people for being poor. So we got a lot of work to do on this path towards abolishing the structure of fines and fees. And we happy and ready to do this work because we know what it would lead to. It will lead to putting a dent in that structure that exploits workers, that creates an exploitable workforce, that creates creates a list of workers that capitalists can use to treat like trash, to not pay living wages, to not give sick days, to not properly provide people health and safety on the jobs because they just that exploitable and just that in need of those jobs. So I'm hoping that, us talking about this today can shed some light on this, this issue, and folks can join us in thinking about what does it look like to continue to change the system, change the structure, and create a world where workers, Black workers, brown workers are treated with dignity and respect. They have the wages they need to take care of themselves and their families, and they just have what they need. And that's what I got, y'all.
Thank you so much, Toya, for that grounding and having us be really clear on why it is that we're holding this important conversation tonight. I think, Mr. Al, if you're ready for it, I think that's a perfect place for you to pick up and just start off by sharing a little bit about yourself and what brought you into this worker-led movement, and then talk some about what the impact of criminalization has been on full and fair employment in New Orleans.
Yeah, good afternoon, family, and thank everybody who's online. The only way we can do this is continue to do this work together. What brought me into the movement? For me, Annette, I was born into this. being a black man, I was currently born into it. I was given to it. I can remember as a young man coming up, my mother had a sibling. I'm a sibling of 4, where, she had to ask for public assistance. And I seen where the support came in, where they took my father out the family. And from that point on, I knew, that I had to do something right, that it wasn't right. I had to hide my daddy clothes and all that. So I would just feel like I was just born into straighten things out, right? Because going to school as a young man, after experiencing that in my household, experiencing that, I used to go to school and the Black Panther was out there. They used to grab us and bring us into the breakfast program. And from there, I learned that we were stronger together. Nobody couldn't dismantle if we were stronger together. So that alone, encouraged me and it instilled in me, right, to fight. So after Katrina, I began to organize. They came in and used Katrina to dismantle public housing, our village, I would call it. They came in and dismantled our village, and I began to organize the people that were left in the village to stand up and fight. So we started organizing. We went to the Housing Authority of New Orleans, where 50 people took over the Housing Authority. They met once a month, every month. And we was able to go in and demand, not ask them, but literally demand the process of us building our own community. Out of that came, 50 jobs. That was for local people, right? Because we used the 1968 HUD Act that definitely got us what we asked for, those jobs in our community. So now you see a vibrant community, right? That was thriving. And, we found out later, they gave us what we wanted, and the policy said that, the 1968 HUD Act. We got the 50 jobs, but they was all low-paying jobs, right? It was the bottom of the pole jobs. And what they used for is full and fair employment in this city, and around criminalization, we were all convicted felons, right? So therefore, they gave us the bottom of the jobs, right? So using that, you couldn't go straight to the employer and get hired. They told you had to go to a tip service, right? So you enter into the tip service to get a job. That's exploitation of Black people, because no longer getting health insurance or anything, but you're at the bottom of the pole, you work in temp service job for a lower pay. So we've seen that exploitation. And Talia explained some of the wins that we've done. But this city and around this country, they use people as exploited workers. And we knew in New Orleans that we had to have full and fair employment, right? But we weren't able to get to the directive to the employee because we had to deal with the temp service. So what we did was, like Talia said, there were some victories that we won. We still continued to organize where we wrote a policy that said that you had to hire local people. So, we was able to write that policy, but still, criminalization was a high thing, right? That, well, you got a convicted felon, well, you can't work, you can't get a job, right? So using that, and that was one barrier to employment because, again, you couldn't go to the employer. And so the temp service will whip us down. So we created the policy, was able to go in, right, and get some people training with the union. Actually got some people into jobs with the union, right? They became carpenters. They got into the carpenters union. And even though that was helpful, we still had some issues with the union down south. We don't have a union density, so it was a problem. And that was a huge barrier to just trying to get employed through the union, right? Because they still got the good old white boy union that still, put you on a bench and whatnot. But that was another fight that we had to fight that clearly that, some of us made it through, some of us didn't get the opportunity to get those good paying jobs. We always.
You're on mute, Al.
I'm sorry. I'm clear now. We have fought around career ladders here in New Orleans. And that was a big thing for us, that make sure that people get dignified jobs in this community, because the barrier to criminalization will lock you out of job, housing, and everything else that you try to apply for. And how that connects to what we're doing today. Toya spoke about it. Right now, the living wage ordinance and that we put in place around full and fair employment. Thanks to the Hoppers and what they're doing, because now, they're really forcing these contractors to really do what the contract says, right? It really does that, because in there it requires them to pay a living wage, and also they get the sick days that they're required to get. And that's a big old issue for us in the city, again, because nobody follows the law. This city has been built, New Orleans have been built after Katrina on $150 billion. And when you go through the city, who have built this city? You ask the local people, yeah, they was a part of the building process, but they was at the bottom of the totem pole, doing so. So we had to create something that would give people some sort of dignity, make contractors pay what they need to pay. And it's insane how, they got 4 major contractors who have really built this city. So I just thanks to the Hoppers and what they're doing, around the ordinance that's in place, the living wage ordinance that's in place. And, they're bringing a lot of attention to, what other contractors should be doing. After putting that ordinance in place, like Toya said, in 2016, there's maybe, 144 different contracts that really falls under this living wage ordinance, that we have to continue to organize, continue to make people aware of that, this living wage ordinance is in place. And I take my hat off to the Hoppers and Detrian them and Howard them that's doing the great work to make sure that we hold these contractors accountable for the living wage ordinance. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Al. Thank you for those remarks and those comments. We're going to continue on and shift over to Tawanda. Of course, it's critical to the work of STAND and the work of so many people organizing at the grassroots level, people's experiences, and connect that to these broader campaigns and have people really see and be really clear about their role in it and why it's important to fight. And so, Ms. Tawana, I wanted to give you a little space to share some of your story around your experience with fines and fees, and just like how that's transitioned you into a leader within the Stand with Dignity and within this broader movement. And love the background, love your blue morpho butterflies and your blue braids and all of that stuff. I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm Tawana. I first heard about Stand with Dignity through the news when I seen a RTA worker. He was so excited, like he was in tears, crying of how he was able to get rid of all of his tickets, how he was able to get his dream job because of Stand with Dignity, and how they helped him erase all of his tickets. And he had like over 10,000 worth of tickets. And at that time I was over 7,000, 8,000. So I found out about them. I started stalking them, harassing them, found out about their Warren Clinic. I went to the Warren Clinic. I did not get a part of it because they've reached their max and I didn't know anything about him to sign up before. And I was there all day. So I was like, oh. So just riding around, I have a child. He's 13 now, but at that time he was about 12, 11. And I was arrested multiple times in front of my son just for tickets, traffic tickets. Never been to jail for anything illegal, no drugs, no substance, any of that, but traffic tickets. I was put in handcuffs, had to wear an orange jumper because of traffic tickets. Stand with Dignity really helped me because I've just been unable to get jobs that I would like to get because you need a driver's license. It just was so stressful. I was just put in this I was just at a standstill. My son's school, I have to bring him to school. I have to drive to work. I have to be able to create a living for him. And I was just taking the risk of getting stopped by the police because I had to risk it just to provide a living for my son. But Stand with Dignity, they really, really, really helped me. And I seen that it was so much more than just the Warren Clinic. I seen, when I started going to the meetings, I see how passionate they are about changing the community, helping the community. I see how they're going to the courts all of the time. They're meeting with legislators. They're meeting with all type of people trying to get laws changed for everyone and to make it fair for everyone, because at this moment it's not fair. Like, you should not be arrested for a ticket just for a busted headlight. And that puts you at risk of losing your job, puts you at risk of having people that you barely know take care of your kids. And it's like a trickle-down effect. But I seen how dedicated they were to the community, and it gave me the light, it gave me the fuel to want to do the same as far as with my community. And now, even with the job I have now, I work in the medical field. And as you guys know, how stressful it is with the COVID-19, and being front and center is just very, very overwhelming. And I work for a huge corporation, which I will not name, but it's like they don't really care for their employees, the ones that's actually risking their lives. We barely have masks. We barely have disinfectants for anything. And we putting our health at risk. And it makes me, from Standing with Dignity, it's giving me the strength to fight for us. And I'm constantly emailing corporate. I'm constantly emailing. And I'm saying that it's a change happening. They start bringing us more because they see the emails from me. And it goes to my child's school. He goes to Lusher. And they've recently, it's been put out that the school is racist, been having a lot of racist issues going on. So I was part of the march. I've been communicating back and forth with the principal. I'm about to join the PTSA, and it's like I'm fighting for him. So it's just all around, just with everything within my job, my child's school, the community. It's just, I want to see change for the next generation, for my son's generation. I don't want him to have to go through what I went through, or what I'm going through. And I'm just thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for everyone. I'm thankful for you guys' passion. And this is why I'm the most happy, is when I'm doing something to create change for my community. And I don't know, I just feel like my ancestors will be proud. This is where I'm more content, when I'm doing stuff like this.
Thank you so much, Rona, for sharing some of your story. And like, you're just beaming as you're sharing about this too. So I can't think of anything more important than like being confident in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing, and how you're supposed to be speaking up for yourself, your family, and community at this time. So thank you. And yes, of course, your ancestors are proud. With that, I'm going to keep us moving through our speakers here. Next, we're going to hear from Detrian. And Detrian, just to kind of frame your thoughts, just want you to share a little bit about how you've gotten involved in this movement, and tell us a little bit about the story of the City Waste Union and what they're fighting for.
Of course. My name is Detrian Wilkin, and I am with the City Waste Union, we'll call their representative. I was called by one of my uncles, his name is Jonathan Edward, to help him. He asked me to help him create a GoFundMe account, and before I knew it, I was an organizer. We had raised close to $200,000, and we were doing all kinds of things that I had never done before. And we had people like Toya and other organizations who just bombarded us. And Mr. Al, who was so enthusiastic about this work, and it was a little scary, but we did it. I realized, and I got involved because I recognized the painful shackling of Black men to a system of crippling, consistent poverty, while working for a Black-owned company, no less. So it was evident to me then that the exploitation of Black lives was not impossible when the company doing the exploiting is Black. I knew we had to take action. There was no other option at that point but to step up and say something. The City Waste Union is now, after 10 weeks, we are a nonprofit organization formed by 14 beautiful Black men who are fighting for hoppers and other sanitation workers around the city and around the world. They have received so much support, people from Argentina and Germany, and people see these men and they are so inspired, and they're truly, like I am, I'm sure like some of you are, in awe of them. We started this journey on May 5th and have actively been striking since then. The guys are fighting for hazard pay of $150 per week. These guys face hazardous conditions every single day, but during a pandemic, their concerns for the health and safety turned urgent. We had no choice but to start asking for the things that these guys deserve just to protect them and their families. They're also asking for proper distribution of personal protective equipment. The original ask was for personal protective equipment overall, but there was a response from Metro that said that they had purchased 15,000 KN95 masks. So we said, well, where is it? Okay, well, if you have it, will you distribute it properly? The second thing was a higher living wage of $15 per hour. The hoppers prior to the strike were making $10.25 per hour, and they're now asking for a well-deserved $15 per hour for their work. They're also asking for better working conditions. At any given time, Metro as a company has access to 50 or more hoppers. But prior to the strike, there was no place for these men to use the facilities. So they would just have to wait. So 50 or more people trying to use one porta potty. If it was raining outside, the guys would just have to stand outside and get wet and then work their whole route soaking wet, dumping trash cans. So even more health risks. And since the strike started, the mayor has made one statement simply telling us that Metro is responsible for their workers. Metro came out and made another statement to say that as a basic, cheaper way to do things, they have a secondary or a third-party company that subcontracts this hopper work or the sanitation work to, to Metro, basically. So it's Metro, or I'm sorry, it's the city, then it's Metro, then it's people ready to subcontractor, and then the hopper who does the work. So unfortunately, the city is so insulated that it takes the hopper to address people ready and then Metro and then try to go at the city. And it just makes for a much harder fight. So who do you ask? Who do you tell? Where do you bring your problems to truly? And as a hopper and as a person who is a patron in this city and is a citizen, we can't keep trying to figure out who to ask and who to do or who to talk to about whatever. So we went on strike and just said, we are sick of this shit. We deserve better. And that's what they did. So when you see the mayor parading in the streets and second lining with everybody else, remember the sanitation worker who addresses the aftermath of those good times. Think about those guys. The people who are cleaning up the shit you are throwing in the street, and the mayor is throwing in the street. These guys feel unheard, they feel unseen, they feel inevitably invisible, and that invisibility is engulfing. And they deserve better. So to quote Dr. King, our society one day will come to respect the sanitation worker if it is to survive. For the person who picks up our garbage in the final analysis is as significant as the physician. For if he doesn't do his job, diseases are rampant. And we know this to be true, especially in a time facing a pandemic like COVID-19. So thank you for your support and for your solidarity.
Thank you, Detrion, for sharing that. And again, I just want to highlight further up in the chat that there's a link to the New York Times opinion piece that Detrion penned last week, I believe it was, about the sanitation workers strike and the City Waste Union. So I encourage y'all to check that out and to support this campaign as much as you can. And I live in New Orleans. I'm about 40, right now I'm in Mississippi, about 40 miles south of Memphis, and have been really present too, and thinking about the sanitation worker strike there, the final, the place where Dr. Martin Luther King was killed, and just thinking about this long lineage that these workers are a part of. This fight for dignity started, decades and centuries ago, and that they are squarely walking in that tradition, and that work is unfinished. So thank you for your efforts in moving this along and continuing to fight this fight. I want to, with that, go to Mr. Peters, who is one of the hoppers that's involved in this movement, that's leading this movement. And Mr. Peters, if you could, will you just share a little bit about why and how you got involved, and talk about what your work conditions are like as a hopper and why this strike is so important? And Mr. Peters, if you're talking, you're muted, so just unmute yourself, please.
Hello?
There you are. Yes, we can hear you now.
Hey, hi, I'm Harold Peters. One strike individual is something I happened to Metro for 14 or so years. And since I've been there, I think we received a $5 raise. We get paid $95, and we end up making $100 a day. But since then, well, even then, we was getting lowballed. But anyway, since then, nothing. So I think the fellas just got together and, decided one day, a heavy day, that we wasn't gonna get on the trucks. And I guess since then we just took a leap of faith. We started out maybe 50 people. No, maybe 40 people didn't get on the trucks for maybe a day or two. And like a day or two into 10 weeks, and like maybe 14 or 15 hoppers remain. Since then, it's unbelievable. I mean, I'm unemployed, but it's really been unbelievable. Since, let's say for the last 70 days, I formed a bond with a certain group of guys that I maybe spoke to or just knew their name, but now I know what they found and also know about their fight. Also, we kind of find out that I happen to be the oldest person on the strike. So the longest Metro hopper just so happened to be the oldest one on the strike. And even it's been a blessing because I actually been able to talk to, we got 20-something-year-olds, 30-something-year-olds, 40-something-year-olds. So like 3 different decades of hoppers, of veterans, emotional veterans. And I guess one way to kind of throw into a leadership role, more leading example. We still trying to learn more about ourselves, the fight. Like at first we just for a pay increase. I think we mostly was concerned about hazard COVID. I should have started. Hold on, lost me for a second. We were thinking about hazard pay. And like they get pay increase because we're only 20 hours. And since then,
yes,
like I said, it's been unbelievable. See, we didn't know what they got. and like pull.
Mr. Peters?
Yeah.
Mr. Peters, can you hear me okay? Mr. Peters, I don't want to cut you off, but we're having a really hard time hearing you. I don't know if it's possible for you to get to a place with a stronger connection, because we don't want to miss what you're sharing. So if it's possible to either just call in by phone, or if you can get someplace where you have a little bit of a stronger connection. I don't know if you're outside or what it might be. But we're gonna pause. We're gonna pause and let you get to a place. Are you able to get someplace where you can connect in a little bit better? We're gonna, while you're doing that, we're gonna move on to Mandisa, but I do want to circle back to you on the chance that we have a stronger connection so that you can finish out those thoughts, okay? I think we'll try muting you for now while you work it out. And y'all, I'm sure you're seeing that there are some polling questions that have been coming up as our panelists have been speaking and sharing. So please do take a brief moment just to respond to those so that we can look at that information at the close of this conversation. Mandisa Moore O'Neill, wanted to turn this over to you to kind of round out this group of esteemed panelists here. But wanting you to just kind of share, why is it important to have an abolitionist Black feminist strategy in doing this work, and how does that intersectionality help us build a new world that works for everyone?
Thank you. I see Mr. Harold is back on. Did you want to?
Let's see. Mr. Harold, are you there? Are you back with us?
Yeah. See. Let's see. Yeah, can you hear me?
We can see you now. We can hear you. It's still a little bit broken up though. You're on mute now, it looks like too. We're gonna send you a message in the chat with the phone number so you can call in, okay? So that way we can at least have clear audio from you.
Yeah.
So just hold for a moment, and someone's gonna send you a message in your private chat, and then you can call in, all right? While you're doing that, we're gonna let Mandisa just share a few thoughts, and I'm gonna circle back to you, okay? All right, thank you. All right, so Mandisa, this abolitionist Black feminist strategy in this work, why does this intersectionality help us build a world that works for everybody?
Okay. So first, I just want to say thank you for Toya Pham for asking me to be in this conversation. I love talking about freedom and dreaming of freedom with other Black people. So I'm just stoked to be in this conversation. And when I'm talking about abolition, I start with one of the Black women who really guided my understandings of abolition. And so I'm going to start with Miriam Kaba, who constantly gives us so much in service to our liberation. So when she was asked, what is abolition? She says, what is, so to speak, the object of abolition? Not so much the abolition of prisons, but the abolition of a society that could have prisons, that could have slavery, that could have wages, and therefore not abolition as the elimination of anything, but abolition as the founding of a new society. And for me, abolition is a daily praxis, a political framework, and an organizing strategy. So when I say it's a political framework, hopefully abolition is guiding all of the work that we do. If we're doing work in the HIV field, if we're doing work in reproductive justice, housing, workers' rights, it should be done in this way that is abolitionist minded, as Toya talked about earlier, in terms of, is this strategy, is this action, is it growing the state? Is it growing the nation state? Is it growing the state's ability to harm us and to kill us and to commit acts of violence against us? And when we talk about it as an organizing strategy, it's a way we do our work. It's a way that we see campaigns that we have. And when I talk about it as a daily praxis, what are we doing to abolish the police inside of us? And the first part to me is admitting that we've all been raised in a society that punishes instead of transforms. So when we see Black trans women being free on the street, is our first sort of reaction to some way try and police their ability to be free? Even if how they're free is different than how we're free? So how are we grappling with these things that show up in our life? And for me, abolition has been super liberating. It's been like a breath of fresh air. And there are two things that really ground me in my abolitionist politic and my abolitionist practice, acknowledging, guess what? Part of what I've learned is I don't always do the thing that I want to do, but abolition gives me a chance to assess, take responsibility, and to come again. So what grounds me as an abolitionist is a Black feminist politic. And when I say a Black feminist politic, I'm not talking about what's seen on TV, which is often like this idea of Black women who hate Black men, and it's very cis-focused and it's very heterosexual and all of these things. No. Black feminism, if you actually talk to Black feminists and read what we write and watch our art and watch our videos and engage with us, it's clear it's a way of seeing the complexities in everyone. Black feminism, it rejects these simple narratives, right? It says we must bring our full selves into every room. We must bring our full selves into the conversation, into the organizing, into the strategies. It says that is what leads us to freedom, not saying, okay, I'm Black on this day, I'm a woman on this day, I'm a lesbian on this day. No. All of these things impact how I enter this room and what's needed for my liberation. Black feminism also says we are not in competition with each other. Capitalism tells us there's only so much resources. Therefore, capitalism says we can only talk about George Floyd. Black feminism says, no. We fuck up the state. So when the state comes for any of us, we say something. That's what Black feminism says, mandates, and for me, that's important as we talk about abolition, which also looks at systems, also looks at institutions. Something else that really grounds me in abolition is what it has to offer Black people. And to me, it has to offer us so much that reforms just can't offer us. And what I mean by that is white supremacy, heteropatriarchy, capitalism, and colonialism have snatched away our ability to dream and to imagine we deserve better than the world that we see around us. Abolition, it demands we imagine the world we deserve to be in, not the world that is fiscally possible under the City of New Orleans budget. No. Abolition says, what's the world each of us deserve to be in? Let's build towards that. So I'm from New Orleans. My family is from New Orleans. And one of the things about being from New Orleans is we understand very clearly what's the connection of Blackness, enslavement, and capital. Because let's be very clear, Blackness is capital. As we talk about capitalism as this world, like as this word, Blackness was the capital. It was what built all these things that we see. Thinking of what Mr. Al said, I'm thinking of that in terms of our parents and our grandparents. Thinking about being in South Louisiana, it's a lot of sugar cane down here. Other places in the Deep South had cotton, but here's a lot of sugar cane. And if you look at historical texts of French historians and French economists, they'll say, yes, sugarcane was this backbreaking industry, but if we work them twice as hard, it will increase our profit 4 times. Therefore, from a very early time, it was very clear profits matters over people. And that's something that still plays out in today. So if we look at New Orleans, we were the hub of what's called the domestic slave trade, right? Where even after we hear about how enslavement was outlawed in the US in 1808, okay, that's international. But all that meant is that the trafficking of Africans within the country heightened and increased, and we were ground zero. How are we making that connection to how we have the highest incarceration in the world, in the country to this day? It didn't just happen. We've always had the highest trafficking rates of Africans. It was just called a domestic slave trade and all these other terms for it. I'm also looking at notes, sorry. Yeah, so we have to make, the connections. The other thing that I think about when Mr. Al was talking about unions in the South and the connection to abolition, is this a reason why unions in the South, in the Deep South particularly, is such a hard thing? Because even during the Black or the Great Migration, it was still thousands, millions of us in the South. It was a vested interest to make sure it was hard to organize here. We use words like organizing, strategy, and think that we're the only ones who have that language. When the right had a whole Southern strategy that's still impacting our work, that's still impacting how we do all of the things that we do. So just thinking of that in terms of what has the vested interest been in keeping this system, and what are the things that we have to actually tear this system down. I also think of what abolition offers us. It's a chance to move past these either or conversations that this world tells us is normal, good, bad, right? Undeserving or deserving, right? Exploited or exploitee. There's so much more than in that sort of dichotomy that we have to look for, because if it's true that only bad people are in prison, and we know so many people in prison who are in there for things that don't make sense, how does that disrupt narratives of who deserves to be locked up? If we understand that the racist, sexist, classist myth of hard work equals wealth, and we know who the hardest working people are in this country, and we know who the brokest people are in this country. So if we understand that these myths are serving a purpose, my question that I'm always asking myself, and I'm asking of others, what do we have to lose? If we've seen example of how this system is failing us. It was failing us when we had white leaders. It's failing us as we have Black leaders who supposedly do work in the interest of Black people. We know that's not true, as Day expertly has laid out, in the interest of Metro and the many elite powers who defend Metro. What do we have to lose? If we know that simply taking somebody with this, like a certain race, and putting them over this power Oh, thank you, Wendy. And what Mr. Harold said as well, what do we have to lose? And so abolition, as Ms. Kaba has said, it's not just tearing down something, it's actually building the things that keep us safe. It's building the things that help us grow. It's building things like that help us parent, that help us love in ways that we already know how to do. So, yeah.
Thank you for that, Mandy. So there's a lot of snaps and silent applause in the chat going off. I'm just amening and affirming so much of what you said there. So thank you for just placing that in this broader context and helping us see the significance of this movement and this effort and this fight and this broader movement for justice and equity in a world that is deserving of us. I want to take a moment before we open it up to question and answer just to see if Mr. Peters was able to call in, and so that we can hear some final thoughts from him before we open it up to the audience. So Mr. Peters, are you back on the line? If you're talking, you're on mute. Okay, it looks like we don't have him back on the line quite yet, but hopefully he can join us during this question and answer piece. So this is the part of our evening where we want to, open this up to have a broader discussion with you all. We've asked that folks submit your questions and answers via the little Q&A box at the bottom. We haven't received any yet. I'm sure y'all have some thoughts and questions and answers, or if there's just anything that you want to affirm, something that you heard that you really just want to kind of repeat back or emphasize for the group.
Preguntas y respuestas hoy.
So are there any questions from the audience?
Algunas preguntas.
Michelle, I sent you in the wrong channel.
Okay. Oh.
I'm in the wrong channel.
All right. Yeah. Well, and yeah, I think we need to mute you on this end. Okay, I see one question that I'll just go ahead and read out. And this is kind of getting into what some of the closing comments will be from Toya, but what support is needed to support this effort? I think it's powerful that you haven't gotten money for labor from labor or foundations. What resources do you need? What actions can we take? So I think Toya, Detrian, or whoever feels most equipped to answer this question, how do you respond?
I can start. I think step one is recognizing what do we really mean when we say that Black Lives Matter. What's become obvious, and it's taken 6 years for it to become obvious, is that we mean that our lives matter. And interaction with the police should not result in our death, right? That's obvious, that's simple, and that's basic, right? We need to live. What's even more obvious when we say Black Lives Matter means that our children deserve to be on the street without being harassed or harmed by police. Black Lives Matter also mean we can go to work and receive a livable wage. Black Lives Matter also mean that we should be able to get a savings wage, a vacation wage, right? Black Lives Matter mean that we should live humanely. That mean that all people should actually live humanely. We know that white supremacists puts Black lives at the bottom. And I think we just need to recognize what that means. I think we also got to recognize that had Harriet waited on reform, we would be in a whole nother world. So I think just like Harriet didn't wait on reform, we can't wait on reform. So I think there's resources definitely that we could be given, and funding our projects, giving money to City Waste Union, giving money to the efforts of Stand with Dignity is always good, but I think we need people to be thinking in a similar way that we're thinking as they think about what capacities we need. We need the thought of our people to shift and change.
Thank you, Toya. And Detrian, I'm gonna shift this question to you as well. what support is needed for this campaign specifically? I know I've been getting phone calls asking me to come and come out and be on the front line protesting and donating and everything like that. So can you talk a little bit about what support looks like in that capacity?
What support looks like is for us at the City Waste Union is finding the content, seeing the content, sharing the content, making people aware of this fight, because it's not just about hoppers. It's about the dignity and the indignities that people are experiencing and the dignity people are pursuing in this battle. A lot of people are really upset that 14 Black beautiful men are attacking a Black-owned, a locally sourced and locally owned company that is African-American in our community. But as I've stated before, exploitation and white supremacy mindsets do not stop when the company is African-American. It doesn't stop. And I believe that as Black and brown people in this community, a community that is majority Black, a community that has a working class that is majority Black, a community where labor looks like Black and brown people who make the least but have the most impact, it's our responsibility when we're the owners and the proprietors of businesses in those communities, it's your responsibility to treat people fairly. When you get into that business, when you start that company, and then you amass this wealth, it's your responsibility to ensure the care of the people who you employ. Period. There is no attacking one person because we're trying to pursue success for another company, or we're trying to attack Jimmy and Glenn. We said several times before, I've said several times before, that if I had the power, I would cook a pot of beans, I would invite Jimmy and Glenn, and I would explain to them the perpetual cycle that they are investing in, because it's apparent that they don't know. And even if they don't know, it sounds to me and just looks to me, and I'm sure to you all, that they just don't give a shit. And I can't support that attitude, nor can any of us. We don't have, right now especially, is not the time to support the constant perpetual cycle of poverty in our communities when we live in a community where we have an income that could be $10.25 per hour, but then we look at what the cost is to purchase a home. Or we look at low income housing and how they cap the limit that you can make to live in a home, and then they say, and then they try to, and then you get trapped really in those low income houses where you can't make a certain amount. So you stay there, and then you struggle to live there because you make just enough to live, but not enough to truly thrive. And then you get trapped in the fines and the fees once you're late for your rent that you really couldn't afford to begin with. Or like the struggles of Tawana when she spoke and said, you might have a traffic ticket and then get arrested in front of your child because you might not be able to afford paying those fines and fees. And then because you work that job that pays $10.25 an hour, you can't go to court, so then they give you another fee. Now your child is suffering because maybe you can't bring them to school. So now my child no longer has access to a proper beneficial education. And don't even get me started on education in the city of New Orleans and how that has failed us. So when people ask the question, why are we doing this to Jimmy and Glenn? My children, who I don't even have yet, the children that don't exist, but my hypothetical children are the reason I'm doing this. And my grandmother and my family and my people and the uncle I love and the people who support him as well that I love, we're going to get up every day and we're going to do this until Jimmy and Glenn sit down at a table and recognize that they are the supporters of a system that was not built to empower us, period.
May I add on to that, Day?
Sure.
Well, not add on, but it's funny, like, how we hold working class Black and brown people to a different standard than we hold people that have money or wealth or who are aspiring to that.
Absolutely.
And what I mean by that is, so we're doing something to them, but them not paying people isn't framed as doing something to us, right? It gets framed as, oh, that's the free market, right?
Yep.
Or in the case of the city of New Orleans, who encourages the subcontracting, neoliberalism is the issue. Like this way in which what the state was responsible for, now private companies are, and that's not seen as an issue. So I also want to just talk about how we frame things and often hold those who are trying to make it work in the system responsible in a way that people who actually have power to change something don't get held in that same way. And I'm not saying that like as far as the person who asked the question here per se, but it's a common way that we get really fucked up about who are the ones who are to blame for this. And it's not the hoppers.
And it's not any of the working class. It's none of us. It's none of the working class that has the responsibility to address the wage gap in this city. How is it you make $10.7 million, you pay the subcontracting company $2.7 million, but the hoppers who hop on and off the garbage truck all day long, wind, sleet, snow, shine, rain, whatever, they make $10.25. They do the hard work. And LaToya, who literally holds the handkerchief in her hand, and she second lines up the street with the Indians, she has nothing to say. She stands silent. How does it happen? How do we live in this society? And when do we stop saying you're attacking the Black and brown business? Somebody should have attacked this shit a long time ago. It just happened to be my uncle, who I love, that now needed somebody to attack it. So I'm sorry, you gonna hold this L though, because we're not gonna stop. So hold this L.
Sorry, not sorry.
Not sorry.
Thank you, Datrian. Thank you, Mandisa. So we, the chat's going off, Q&A is going off. I want to circle back because Mr. Peters is on with us. And Mr. Peters, we weren't able to hear you as clearly as we would have loved to throughout all of your comments, but I do want to pose a couple questions to you. One is just to talk a little bit about how being on strike has really impacted your leadership. And then what do you dream of? Like, what is the reality that you see at the end of this campaign?
Let's see. Well, the strike, just asking me how did it impact my leadership? Well, leadership don't just come with age. And Lord said the same, I'll be 44 in 2 more weeks. But I guess it was different things. For number one, I happen to be why I was like that. I always wondered what my purpose was. I figured it was bigger than hopping. But anyway, I happen to be like one person who can communicate with the different age gaps, the different attitudes, the different, I guess maybe not by doing so much talking, but by letting them talk, and then, find my avenue, you know what I'm saying? Find to help them, I guess to help them rectify the situation. But mainly, it's been patience, like something I learned, and still learning. Like, we can get over the hump with anything, you just have to have patience. And I think the leadership aspect of it, it just been, I didn't look to myself as a leader. Well, I didn't think, I was just like them, We're making the same thing. Nobody's better than the other one. All of this happened to be veterans, and all of this happened to have a heart, And I guess when the communication was there and the different feedback, that was going on, and at that point I started saying, more people come to me and asking me my opinion, my point on different things. So while they just saw me as an older guy, when we went to different discussions, whether it being money, finances, business, different things, they was able to hear what I had to say, and, they kind of latched on to it. So, in the process, I just went to helping everybody out, whatever I can to help, even when I couldn't help myself in certain things, I made sure that I was able, you know, to lend some kind of support to the guys. And they taking it and run with it. I mean, we got 4 years, 24 years, 14 years. We got all different ages. They taking it and run with it. I mean, everybody got hot, you know, and I guess it's good waking up and knowing I'm surrounded by people, you know, like with that same enthusiasm. I mean, we ain't trying to break nobody back, but I don't want nobody to go through what I've been through, because my back broke. If my son go to work with me right now, today, and I've been hopping over 20 years, me and him will make the same thing. So do you think that's right?
Not at all. Not at all.
I mean, 20 years, no sick pay, no vacation pay. No, I probably got about $50,000 doctor bill from heat exhaustion. And that's from paying more attention to metro/disposal garbage than my body. So, you know, I mean, and then I just wanted to make my kids happy. And I know, you know, like, I just kind of wanted to lead by example. I mean, I don't want to stop nobody earning a check, but I really don't think somebody been, you know, like, after 20 years, you know, like, you should at least been elevated. Like, I mean, in my case, I've been Metro since 2006. I've been trained half the hoppers in there. And I just looked at it as the people stuck with it. I trained them, and they was able to support their family. You know, but for 1025, they're killing us. You know, we just asked them to pay us, you know. To pay us. They pay everybody but us. Second, third party. To pay us. We get wet. We get, I mean, the things that we go through, the average person, they'll quit in an hour. But we do this continuously, 6 to 7 hours a week. I mean, we ain't going to get into the numbers thing. I mean, I reported earlier, we left like 250,000 pounds of garbage a week. So, you know, like, we do our part, you know. I guess in the end, we just want, like, an honest day, pay for an honest day's work. But,
thank you so much, Mr. Peters. Thank you so much, Mr. Peters, and thank you for speaking on that and sharing that. I think as you were talking, you were answering some of the questions that folks were posing as well. One of them was about, like, how do wages equate to dignity and respect? And I think you really spoke to that, particularly towards the end too. Like, you've been doing this work a long time, as have many of the men that have been working alongside you. You've trained people, you've made it possible for people to be able to support their families. And you know, that's some of what respect and dignity looks like. And so just want to, you know, just acknowledge that sacrifice. And you said something about your back being broken. Your back is strong now. You know, like, I know that the conditions have been such that it hasn't honored your, what you need and what our community needs to be able to take care of itself and sustain. But only place I push back is say that your back is strong. So thank you so much for those reflections and for sharing a little bit more about your leadership and your story. I'm looking at the questions, and so I want to try and blend a couple of them together, and whoever feels compelled to answer, please just go for it. And some of the comments that were shared, there was discussion about subcontractors on the record, and that and wanting to just hear from the panelists about the role that subcontractors have played in this landscape of Black workers' rights in this moment and in the past. And then, and you know, I want to wed that with this question about the connections to the 1968 worker strikes in Memphis and some of what we're seeing there. So whoever feels comfortable talking about that, what's the role for subcontractors in here? Especially as we talked about a lot of these being Black companies and a lot of effort to, you know, bring more DBEs and everything into the fold and into some of these city contracts and spaces and opportunities. What's the role, what's the obligation, what's the responsibility of these subcontractors? What's the role they've played in this movement? currently and in the past, and what are some of those through lines we're seeing from 1968?
For me and that, you know, that's the way we move forward. You know, I always looked at how can Black contractors become generals. And in this case, you know, Mr. Glenn Woods is a general in this case because, you know, we know that 35% of all subcontractors is Black businesses, and I always wanted them to emerge together and come general. So in this case, we're talking about a general. You know, what Mr. Glenn is a general. Why he's not training and paying his workers dignified pay is one for me. And when I say exploitation of people, I don't care what color you is. Our fight is not about what color you is, it's about exploitation of people, right? And Woolwork, Mr. Woods is exploiting people. I don't care what color you is. The mayor, you're ignoring your people as well. So that goes all to people who are exploiting people. So as far as the contractors go, there have been issues where, you know, we have got with subcontractors on some things where they underbid themselves and wasn't able to come in and train the workers, right, and get them dignified pay. They were just looking at the $1 million contract they had, they underbid themselves, now they can't train the workers, so you get 150 Black workers and just exploit them, right, for your material gain. So that's have been a huge problem that we see in the rebuilding of this $150 billion contract that didn't come through New Orleans. We've seen the exploitation. I don't care what color you is, contractors are doing it. You know, they're coming in and, you know, it's like a man with a whip. You know, we still get whipped on our back when we have to go through these temp service jobs and these small jobs. That's what it feels like for Harold. That's what it feels like for Harold when his back is broke. It feels like the man is whipping him on his back all the time. So, you know, we have to get the contractors to come together and really have job training where people can have careers. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Al.
And
does anybody want to go ahead, Detrian? Thank you.
All right. To add to how this particular strike for the sanitation workers in New Orleans, how they connect to the 1968 strike. Originally, the guys started in the very beginning of the strike, they started holding these signs that say, "I'm a man." They didn't know the story behind the signs in the very beginning. But after hearing the story, which was when there were 2 sanitation workers who were crushed to death in the back of a sanitation truck. When they were crushed, it was raining outside. They didn't have the proper gear. They didn't have the proper protection, and they died. And that's how this strike started. When we had that conversation, some of the hoppers in New Orleans said, "I've hopped in the back of a truck before, never even, when it was raining, never thinking that it could malfunction and could crush me and could cause me pain or I could die." They never even thought about it. But they also said that back in 1968, all those years ago, they were asking for proper PPE, and today we're asking for proper PPE. They were asking to be recognized by the city, and their fight was directly with the mayor because the sanitation workers in Memphis were city employees. In this situation, the mayor is so insulated here because of the subcontract-contractor relationship with the city that the hoppers are trying to be recognized by the city as well. So it's a constant battle of, are we still more than 50 years ago? You know, I mean, do I still have to carry a sign? And the guys have to ask. Thank you, Echo Cole and Robert Walker were the men who were crushed in the back of the sanitation truck. But for the hopper now currently, I think more than anything, these guys are holding these signs to further affirm that they are men. Not just to everyone else, to tell everyone else, but it's a constant repetition in their minds to say, "I'm a man, I'm a man, I'm a man," because it's easy to forget that you're a man when you are a part of this cycle that treats you like an animal, uncared for, unseen, unheard, and you just do the work of cleaning up the streets, making sure the city stays beautiful. Or, I mean, how ironic is it that the same working class have to go and clean up the Hard Rock when there are working class individuals still stuck in there? So, I mean, when we think about that, now I am so disposable as the working class that I can go in and dispose of the foolishness that was brought on by this city. And then now, after that, now I'm the collection person that goes in and has to basically collect the bodies of the Black and brown workers who were in there and are still in there. And the city's response, instead of addressing these men as human beings, is to just change the parade route when we talk about the Hard Rock. So to connect all of these struggles, it just goes to show that the working class is valued for their work, but not valued as workers. I mean, it means nothing to this city, to the elitist and the capitalist attitudes of the people who are in power, the people who have the power. And I hope that this conversation and other conversations shows people and show other people in our communities, Black and brown people, that we are truly the ones with the power. We are the constituents who put these people and can take these people out of office and put people in office and in high places where we can help, we can ensure or try to ensure that they do support us and provide us with what we need. Or we need to just let them go, and they need to continue to hold the L's that destroy the businesses and destroy those attitudes and those mindsets, because we deserve better. The working class deserves better. Harold and my uncle and the 14 men on strike deserve better. Those men who are still in the Hard Rock deserved better.
Thank you for bringing that full circle, Datrion, and really connecting that into like the historic context and the current context that we're facing in the city and that workers are encountering in this city. I feel like you need a campaign shirt, hold the L, or something about the L. We need to, something with the L. I was feeling shirts coming through, I'm just saying. We've got about 10 more minutes for questions, and so I want to run through a few of them. One that I really want to lift up from Wendy is how are the Hoppers documenting this history-making work? We know the importance of telling our stories. We know, if we don't tell our stories, who will, and how they'll be changed. So those lessons can't be held on to. So what is the work that's going into preserving this and capturing these stories as you all are doing this work?
I think it is important for us as an organization to document the work, but then to also show up in the work. And when I say show up in the work, we mean to not just talk about the things that we want, but then to also try to pursue justice and pursue success and pursue help for the people in the community. So we're building relationships. Today, actually, the Hoppers went out and they gave out 100 bags that included masks and hand sanitizer and water and gloves to 100 unhoused people. We bought tents, and we went and handed those tents out as well for people who are unhoused. Southern Solidarity is doing the same things, and we're joining forces with other organizations who are unseen in our communities, unfortunately, but they're doing such great work. And that is the way we're documenting this. I mean, we have done so many news stories. We've been in so many articles and things of that nature. But as far as documentation, I think we're trying to allow the work to continue to, we want to sow the seed in the community and sow the seed with the other organizations as well. But as far as documentation, I think maybe I need to be a little more clear on that. So what specifically do you mean as documentation other than that?
Well, and Wendy, feel free to chime in or jump in the chat to clarify. My sense in reading that question was about some of those stories, so really capturing the stories and the experience of the Hoppers.
Oh,
but
yes,
that's just my interpretation. So.
Well, let me show y'all our stories. These are all of our stories. This is our documentation. These are all of our articles. These are all of the things. These guys love taking pictures. Let me tell you that much. These are our stories. We document them.
Yeah.
I keep them. I hold on to the newspapers because I'm a hoarder. And we're paying attention, and we are so grateful to people who are also paying attention. So these are our documents, and we're keeping and we're having the conversations and making people take notice.
Thank you so much, Detrian. A few more questions, y'all. So this is from an anonymous attendee, but what does a daily abolitionist practice look like? I know that's something that Mandisa spoke to, that Toya spoke to, and the abolition being this concept of not that we've got to abolish the prisons, but we have to abolish a society, we have to decapitate a society that would have us incarcerate people in the first place. So what does it look like to cultivate a daily abolitionist practice?
I can start, Toya, or did you want to start? So I'll speak for myself as to what it means, something that I'm doing and always open to learning more. It's first being willing to fail, not because I want to fail or because it feels good, but because I understand the ways that perfectionism and this constant productivity are actually tools of the system that makes prisons possible, right? Like, it's a reason why it's 1% of rape convictions, because when we talk about sexual violence, there's no perfect victims because ain't nobody living perfect lives. So first, being willing to accept that in myself. That daily practice also means being willing to ask myself questions and to be uncomfortable in terms of situations. So just like on a very, like on a smaller level, perhaps, how many times I may misgender a trans sibling, even though that's not where my heart is. How do I use that in this moment to decenter myself and to keep it moving? So yes, it's fucking uncomfortable when I do those things. And how do I not just sit in that discomfort, which then makes it about me? How do I move out of that discomfort in this way that actually grows all these possibilities and keeps it moving? I also think of a daily practice around re-examining what's my connection to the state. So, for example, I would like to get some sort of home security system, but so many of them automatically record feeds to the police. So it means taking the time and doing like the extra work of finding ones that don't, or it may mean not having one. So how do I have other security practices in place if this one that exists is doing something that I'm not in alignment with? It also means for me being clear, what's the connection of the individual in the collective? So capitalism, white supremacy, and patriarchy like teach us that it's all about the individual, my needs, all these things in ways that really undermine what's needed in order to abolish this system. So how am I centering myself, but in a way that serves my people and not just serves my interests? So it's this, I don't know if that's answering the question, but just like, to me, and also it's acknowledging that, okay, I think I did really well today, and tomorrow is another day, and after that's another day. It's like, so also being clear, it's lifelong work, and it's never this moment where I've arrived, where I'm the Black feminist, where I'm the abolitionist. No. I'm always in this state of learning, unlearning, and I'm always in this state of doing something that helps make it better. So really, to me, it's a balance of unlearning and learning.
Yeah, Ashe, and Yeah, I'm thankful for everything Mandisa said. I think similarly, it's like making a personal commitment that shifts over time, that you're connected to. My personal commitment, I'm a commitment to universal holistic health, infinite love, and wielding my innate power to build liberation. And in that, the first thing I see is I want dignity for myself and everybody I encounter. And I'm reminded of what a trans sibling once said, is that we should all be open to everybody self-determining. And what does that mean? Like allowing people the space to live their best lives, allowing people the space to have their best expression. And I'm also reminded that, like Mandisa said, today I did good, but what about tomorrow? Like, how do I live within my commitment? How do I set intentions for tomorrow and the next day and the days to come that, you know, that I'm checking in with? Because I'm human, and when I do make mistakes, how am I accountable to those mistakes? How am I paying attention to my practices? How am I paying attention to not just, how am I paying attention to my default practices, the practices that I lean into for my safety? And how does those practices impact the world and the people around me? And how do I check in with those practices and find accountability within them, and set some intentional practices to do that prevent the harm that I once caused? That's my personal practice of abolition, of accountability, of creating a world that promotes less harm and more humanity and equity.
Thank you, Toya, and thank you, Mandisa, for that. I'm gonna just keep flowing into some of the other questions. I think you were starting to answer it. You both answered it in your responses just now. And so I'll open it up to the rest of the panelists as well. But you know, it's acknowledged that y'all have been powerfully centered in Blackness in this approach to all of this work. And so for you, what has unapologetically centering Blackness and centering Blackness made possible? So Toya and Mandisa started speaking to that, but Detrian, Mr. Al, Mr. Peters, Twana, what has unapologetically centering Blackness made possible? I'm gonna kick it to Twana if you feel up for it. Yes, I just wanted to see you again in the background of the blues, so giving me all the vibes. So yes, what has this made possible? What do you see opening up by having this specific?
I see connections. I see people with the same vision as me, the same passion as me, especially with everything that's been going on with COVID shutting the city down, and my people coming together finally, and we see like real change, even with the Breonna Taylor law that's been implemented. And so I think we're stronger together when it's more of us. And I like that we're reaching more and more people. And I like that we're strong, that we're not giving up, and that we are putting our foot down and we're demanding change.
Yeah. Thank you, Twana. How about you, Mr. Peters? You still on the line, man? I see that you're there, but you're on mute right now. Are you up for answering this question about being unapologetic and centering Blackness and what that's making possible in this work?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We can hear you. We can hear you. Go ahead. Hello. We might be having, oh, there you go. I hear you again. Did you hear the question, Mr. Peters? Seems like we might be having a little trouble with the connection. So I'll just keep going, and Mr. Peters, if you do come in, we'll pause and we'll come right back to you. How about you, Mr. Al?
For me, unapologetic Black means that, you know, I'm looking at us helping us. You know, it has to start with us, right? And to raise up another generation, right? To show love, right? Because if we don't have that amongst ourselves, you know, and start with us to, you know, formulate what we want to see, because trying to fix this society, you know, we're having a hard time with all the laws and everything in place. So for me, being unapologetically Black, you know, we doing a lot of stuff around the youth, raising them up, you know, into a new world, right? That we really want to see by educating them, learning them about who they are as a people moving forward, right? Because we are scientists, we are physicists, we are all those things that they say we are not in this world. And we got to, you know, raise our children up with that dignity in them, that they're able to achieve all these things. So, you know, I mean, just catering toward our youths and, you know, raising that generation up and say, look, we demand these things to happen for ourselves. And it starts with us. It has to start with us. We as leaders, to raise the next generation up to have that love and care and create that world that we want to see, right? Because I tell you, and I'm getting so, you know, I mean, I'm not tired, but we on the front line. And this is good, the way we organize it now. But we got to have the next generation to come up to know that they begin to love each other and fight and demand for themselves and create that world that we want to see, right? Because it's a battle to fix this one, you know, to even dismantle it. You know, so we doing the work. I'm just doing the work. I'm looking at it to be unapologetic that Black and brown people got to come together, you know, and create their world for themselves. You know, because we waiting on them. They ain't fixing. The government haven't been there to fix nothing for us. And I think this, what we doing here today, that we all one army, and, you know, we gonna plant a lot of fear in this system, and the people that we targeting, they're gonna feel us and they're gonna fear us. But we have to raise that next generation up to say, okay, we got love for each other and not harm each other. So that means unapologetic Black to me. Yeah.
Yes. Nothing to lose but our chains. Thank you, Mr. Al. Datrion, I want to direct a couple questions at you, and then we'll start to wind down a little bit. I want to acknowledge Mama Jaribu Hill on here with some specific questions about the union. And so you spoke to this a little bit earlier, but I'll let you clarify instead of me jumping in and answering. She was asking whether the Hoppers are not a union. I know you spoke about a 501c3, so I'll let you speak to that. And then she's also asking if the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees are supporting the Hoppers in this fight.
So the Hoppers are not a union. The City Waste Union is a name that the Hoppers came up with in the early weeks of the strike. So they are not an official recognized union by the government or state or the NLRA, anything like that. It's a name that the guys came up with. And in their thought process, they wanted to model a union in the way that they support other hoppers and other sanitation workers who need support and simply don't have it because there aren't any unions. We have had several conversations with AFSCME and other unions as well. AFSCME, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, has not been around to provide the support that the hoppers so need. There has not been a presence from AFSCME, but we have spoken to them on several occasions. But unfortunately, while speaking to them is so wonderful, we simply have not had the opportunity to see that representation on the front lines or with the hoppers really at all, other than a phone call to kind of check in and see what's going on. So AFSCME, unfortunately, is a great union. I have nothing bad to say about them. I don't know much about them to say anything bad about them. But physically, as far as support is concerned, the hoppers have not been in contact or seen any support from them on the ground. And I think that's more due to the pandemic than them not wanting to. I think there is a want for that. But I want to eat fried chicken every day and not have high blood pressure. So there we are.
Every day, Datrion, every day?
Every day.
You must be on a quarantine diet with me.
Right, I mean, it's good. If I could have McCarty's every day, I would do that because that's what I want. But the representation for that is not there, nor is it a healthy thing, and it's not a solution to my problems. My hips don't lie, so it won't help anything. And unfortunately, AFSCME wants to be helpful. They want to be there, but they simply are not. And I don't know that they have the capacity to be, unfortunately.
Thank you for taking the time to address that. I'm going to do one more question, just because it's a very easy softball of a question. And so I figured it'd be something that we can end on that won't require y'all to think too hard. But so we've spoken a lot about capitalism and how that operates within our communities, how that's operating in keeping the conditions for these workers where they are. So how do we get out of this master-slave society of capitalism with the consciousness that comes along with it in specific, practical, and transformative ways? Just an easy little question from Ms. Leandra. Whoever wants to take that on. So how do we get out of this master-slave society of capitalism with that consciousness that comes along with it in specific, practical, and transformative ways?
Okay.
Go ahead, Dave.
So I think that many times as Black people, or even as people in power, we have this superhero complex, or what I've seen is people have a superhero complex. And what I mean by that is when criticism comes, or when constructive criticism comes, it's seen as a lessening of power, when in truth, it is an opportunity to do better. It's an opportunity to repair, to reassess where you are and where you fit in the community, or as a resource. And I think it's going to require those big bosses and those people who make all that money with those elitist attitudes and those capitalism, those capitalist mindsets. I think it's going to take them being humble enough to hold the L and take what we are giving as constructive, right? And really take what we're given as constructive and truly reassess and come back to the table with better. I think it's going to take people to put that pride aside and put aside the attitude of, I'm giving you something, so you should just be grateful, and take on the attitude of, I recognize that I might have fucked this up. And so now, since I have fucked this up, it might be my responsibility to try to address this in a way that will further the success of someone other than myself, speaking from the people who are the elite, right? And I think if you just take the opportunity to be the hero and to be the leader, instead of being wounded and, just acting like somebody who's going on emotion, because that's what happens a lot for people in power. They just go on emotion and just talk and do crazy things. So I think that's what it requires. It requires putting your pride aside and just being willing to hold the L and fixing it until it's not your turn anymore. And being humble enough to do that without the foolishness and the back talk and the privilege in your tone and all of that.
Yeah.
Something else that sorry.
Well, I just wanted to add another thing that we can do like now, like ASAP, City Council, the mayor can do, is defund the police, which is a step towards abolishing this criminal justice system that ain't working for us, and fund healthcare and fund education. A second thing we could do is build more worker-owned co-ops, where the workers make the profit. And the workers build the business and make the profit. There was another thing I was thinking about. Oh, the last thing I was thinking about is everybody should read The Color Purple and listen to the lessons. And Wendy O'Neill, she's on here, taught me this. Listen to the lessons of accountability that's taught in the book, The Color Purple. How Mr. was the worst person in the world when we saw that, but he found a way to be accountable. He took the 4 steps of accountability. He acknowledged he was wrong. He said he was sorry. He did something to make it better, and he didn't do it no more. And I think that's what we all need to do to get out of the structure that we're in right now.
Something else that I've been thinking about, talk to your people. I'm a Black professional. And I think sometimes like we have this trend of two things, of really buying into these white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist idea that we are better based on a piece of paper that has bestowed a degree. So consistently tearing down that bullshit hierarchy. And if you have these privileges and these skills, how are we using them in ways that are impacting not only our lives, but those of the people around us? Also, talk to people, not just who are in the broader community of Black people, talk to people who are right next to me in court, who are saying some bullshit about the people who are incarcerated. Let's have conversations with people who are situated with us as well. So like, to me, because like as we think like the master slave, there also was like the overseer in there who was often like a working class white person, like a poor white person. Sometimes, you know, it was a enslaved person who had a little bit more freedom, right? And with that freedom, what did they do to other enslaved people? So also like really like, again, hold that master tendency that you may have in you accountable. So if you are the director of a nonprofit, or if you are in a position of power, how are we holding that responsibility in ways that's accountable? Or have we decided to just replicate the same power dynamics that white men did and then call it progress because we're Black or brown? So to me, it's really like having conversations. Yeah, it makes cocktails awkward, I'm sure, or fried chicken awkward or whatever, but having those conversations of, well, why do you think Black people need to just stop having children out of wedlock? What's your proof that that's even true? What's your proof of that Black men need to stop having babies? Is that from your lived experience or something that you saw on TV, on the racist media? Like, let's interrupt those narratives that, yes, Lord, make it awkward. Like, let's interrupt all those narratives that aren't really rooted. Like when people talk about Black on Black crime, what's that about? So just really like, to me, it's a way of really deconstructing like those master enslaved person narratives that sometimes we've internalized and don't even know it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mandisa. And thank you to all of y'all for being the committed interrupters that you are, and for being committed to fucking the system up so that we can build back something that really is worthy of us and worthy of our future generations. We're coming to the close of our time. I want to pass this back to, Mr. Al, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say
Was somebody going to say something?
Yeah, right quick. To get rid of white supremacy, we got to find love for ourselves as a people. We spend $1.2 trillion as people, and we don't spend it with each other, right? We can easily dismantle capitalism by doing for ourselves, coming together, pooling our resources together, and find ways to bring that money back to us, right? But we take our money and we spend it with other people, and they keep capitalizing off us, and we will stay at the bottom of the pole until we find love for each other, right? And start looking at each other and have that love for each other, and start, sharing these ideas with each other and invest in ourselves. We can do that, but we first have to get rid of me, I got it, you got to get yours. We got to get rid of that mentality as a people, as a people moving forward. So I would say that's how we get rid of it. I'll close with that.
Thank you for bringing it back to the love and the consciousness, Mr. Al, always. So with these last few minutes, I want to kick it back to Toya to close us out, to share some of the calls for action and ways that you can stay up to date and engaged in supporting these various campaigns. Toya, it's on you.
Okay, I was plugging up my computer. So one of my first calls to action is for folks to visit NOLAShakedown.org. On that website, you can read a report that we published in 2019 explaining the plight and impact of outstanding warrants and fines and fees, and how it's creating an exploitable workforce that I talked about earlier. You can also, on that website, register for, well, right now it says you're registering for a warrant clinic, but you're registering to get in the database so that me and Alfred can reach out to you if you have an issue of fines and fees. Well, we can call you, reach out, and support you in figuring out how to deal with that issue, whether it's walking in front of a judge, learning how to file a pro se motion, or getting on a larger motion that the Orleans Public Defender's Office is helping us put in place for the judges to like clear up that system currently. What y'all can also do is join us in holding City Council accountable and accepting ordinances that we're writing to actually change the system moving forward. We want to move the system from a system that actually forces people to pay for the courts that take money from us. We want the courts to actually ask people, you have the ability to pay before they issue our fines and fees? Because right now they don't ask that. A millionaire walks into the court and receives the same fine or fee that a poor person walks into and receive. The millionaire actually end up paying less because the poor person gets trapped into that system. It ends up being a cycle that they're trapped in. They pay a little, they forget to pay, they get more added on to that. So we need to change, we want to do the work to write the policies to actually change that, to make sure that the judges are being accountable to what people can actually pay. And essentially we want municipal and traffic court to be abolished. We don't need it. We don't need people being arrested in front of their children because of traffic tickets when they ain't harm a fly. It ain't right. So that's the call to action I have. And I'm wondering if Alfred want to share anything else that I may have missed. If not, we can move on.
Mr. Al might have stepped away. I want to open that up too for any of the other panelists. Are there any additional calls to action that you all want to share at this time? And I also just want to point out on your screen, you're seeing links to the different campaigns that Toya was just speaking to. So definitely check them out, follow them, social media, all that good stuff. Sign up and get on those email lists so that you can receive regular updates. But yes, to the rest of the panels, any panelists, any other additional calls to action that you want to lift up before we close out our conversation for the evening? Okay, I see head shaking. I see head shaking. All right. Well, just want to thank everybody. Thank you to the team with the National Employment Law Project. Thank you to the Worker Center team. Thank you to the translation support that we've had today. Thank you to all of the panelists. Thank you to all of you for tuning in, for finding this issue important enough and significant enough to spend the end of your day with us. Please share about it. Please talk to people about it. Please ask hard questions. And we invite you to practice thinking about what a daily abolitionist practice looks like in your life, starting there and continuing to put that out into this current moment. So y'all take care of each other, be good to each other, and you'll receive copies of this recorded conversation following this evening. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Annette, for guiding us.
Thank y'all. Thank everybody.
Moderating.
Thank everybody that joined us, y'all.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Miss Annette.
Thank you, Annette. You were flawless.
Thank you, Miss Shirley.
This was great,
girl. You did it. Thank you so much. Snaps to you.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Y'all are brilliant. You make it easy.
Bye, y'all.
Peace, everybody.
So great. Thank you.